everyone, and welcome to another edition of Coast to Coast Connections this time. You know what? Community really is power. And in light of the disturbing developments of our neighbors down south and the betrayal that we're experiencing right now, it's with a glowing heart that I'm so pleased to see the national pride and national unity that is spreading from coast to coast to coast across this nation. You're going to be very happy to hear that there's actually a new bridge being built to actually build that connection even further. Today we're here to talk to the architect of that bridge and to some of the builders. Please welcome Dr. Brian Usher from New Brunswick and Kathleen Theriault, an artist from Pender Island here in BC, coast to coast. Welcome to Coast Connections.
Thank you.
Good to see you both. And Brian, thanks for staying up. It's 9:30 your time there on the East Coast. And
yeah, I might fall asleep halfway through this. Okay.
Yeah, I think your six dogs will probably keep you wide awake there, sir.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this wonderful art bridge that is the genesis, the vision that you had, Brian. What was the need for this bridge? How did this get started?
Well, it's got to the end of last year, and I won't say Donald precipitated this, but we were doing some research to look at what are the challenges artists are facing. The magazine that my wife and I run, Arabella, we had been promoting artists since 2008. But what we were looking for now was, were we doing enough? And our research basically pointed out that there were some real gaps that facing artists, particularly around their career advancement, how they connect. Thinking of Canada is such a vast country, and while we service the artists within the major urban centers, the opportunity for the more rural artists to connect wasn't there. And then what the impact of that is really on mentorship. I mean, in my career, I'm looking at things like career progression. We tend to look at artists in terms of those that are aspiring, achieving, and accomplished. It's a progression.
Right.
And we didn't see anything going on in terms of advancing that progression. How do you help artists? Mm-hmm. And I think as Kathleen and I were talking about the history, you see art movements have always historically involved collectives, people getting together, a sense of collegiality. So from the psychological point, my psychological perspective, I looked at it in terms of how do we actually address this? So the notion of a bridge across the country is really where we were coming from. I know there's lots of excellent local programs right across the country. Particularly, I mean, BC, there's numerous collectives. Mm-hmm. But what we were focused on was national. How do we create a national identity to be able to represent Canada as more than just, say, historically, the group of seven, mm-hmm. but how do we connect? So it was a case of let's make a community and see what it takes to build this community right across the country with various regions being represented. And the key part, the most important part, is all of those regions having the ability to talk to each other, mm-hmm. and be influenced by each other in some way. And that was the gap that we were trying to deal with. Mm-hmm.
And Kathleen, you're a visual artist in your own right. You're an award-winning artist. You've spent many years abroad, working in different countries, getting different perspectives. And you're there at your Hope Catcher studio, love the name, on Pender Island. And how did you come to be involved on the advisory board for the ArtBridge Canada project?
I was on social media and I saw Brian's post and I applied and replied to what he was looking for. He's looking for people to get involved and to work and contribute what they can. And I thought, well, I think I have some things I can contribute. So let's see what we can do. And here I am. So.
And I might add, you're right on the ground floor. This not-for-profit Canadian company is being built as we speak. And I just want to let our viewers know that Dr. Brian Usher comes from a very rich background. He mentioned Arabella magazine, but this is an incredible magazine, started in 2008. And anybody who's an artist has had this. They've got it by their bedside. They've got it in their studio. It's well used. It's an absolute piece of beautiful production. Very, very thick magazine. And due to publication challenges, it's now just online. But I'm happy that so many of us actually have hard copies of this. So Brian, you came from a very rich background, knowing art and knowing how to bring artists together in this type of format.
Yes, it's the ArtBridge concept is not just for artists, but I mean, we're really trying to address the full spectrum of an artist's career. So in that sense, the program is designed to kind of engage as many people who have an interest in the art world as possible. I'm looking at it from the point of view of creating a different culture to how we actually support and promote artists. I'd make this distinction that most of the services that are online or in the thing have got to do with making money. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, but in terms of the one artists that are going to make the money, it's going to be those that are at the accomplished end, those who are already doing well. What I'm interested in is how do we help someone who's aspiring, who's starting out, move up the chain? And because we're leaving them behind if we only focus on those who can sell the most right now. That's not developing the pipeline. You know, that's what's missing in this whole thing. It's very, and it's discouraging. From what I hear, you know, and I think Kathleen probably hears the same thing, is that it's discouraging for people to not have some sense of feedback, either from, and the feedback starts with their colleagues. We did the research last year, and it was like 78% of the artists that we surveyed, their number one source for advice, counsel, is other colleagues. It's not from family, it's not from galleries. I mean, those are part of it.
Sure.
But most of the time it's from other artists. And that's what they look for. There's something that people who understand what they're going through. Now, I don't know if I answered your question in terms of, but this is very different than trying to sell people's art. You'll notice in terms of the three things that we focus on. One is connections. So let's create a platform that will allow artists to connect with each other, dialogue with each other, have mentorship through this platform. And the second is empower them. Let's give them the mentorship programs, the career programs, the business knowledge, but deliver it to them on an online platform. And there's nothing that's doing that currently. That will require a huge investment. I'm not saying that's something you could, very quickly make it happen. And to your earlier point is we're in the startup stage right now. So Kathleen was one of the first people to really see the value of this. But what we're trying to do is reach out to others and say, if you can see merit in what we're doing, join us. Tell us how you can help. And the advisory council currently is about 20 people. We need to grow that so that we have representation right across the country. And that doesn't mean that, the 20 people, that's great. But I could see it being more like a council of 40 to 60 people, different regional aspects to it, all coming together and coordinating the development of the platform, coordinating funding opportunities. I think then it's a much more attractive element to corporate sponsors and reaching out and going beyond that. We've got to get out of this silo mentality that we have. And that's the overall goal, is to make it a national movement, awareness of the scope of what's involved. And like I've said to you, you can envisage somebody who's a sculptor in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia talking to someone in BC, Pender Island, or wherever, and them sharing ideas. And in that sharing, it's no different than what was going on with the Impressionists in Paris at that cafe, sharing stories. It doesn't take away from the individuality of the artist. It feeds a common bond, social community bond, and that's supportive and that encourages creativity. That's the overall sense of this, is collegiality fosters creativity and innovation.
Mhm.
And Kathleen, what kind of skills or experience are you looking for when you're building the advisory council? If viewers are watching, what types of people and skills are you looking for to populate this council, pardon me?
Well, you have to think about that, but I feel like the energy to make the connection and the importance of connecting with others and learning and sharing and communicating, bringing Canadian artists together in such a way that they never have been able to before, because now with all of our associations in all of our provinces, even though some of our associations are connected, like for example, the Federation of Canadian Artists or the Canadian Society of Artists, we are connected, but we're not connected fully, in a sense that we feel somewhat separate. If there's one platform where we can all come together and communicate and share opportunities, grants, retreats, artist residencies, opportunities, which I know we can get that information. That information is available to us now online, but as some artists may not be aware of where to go, who to connect to, what programs are best, should I use this program to organize my inventory? Which one is the best for an overall experience for an artist? Which one is most cohesive? Which one gives me the ability to do things quickly and cleanly and concisely without too much concern of going all over the place? There are so many things that I have that I use that I can share. And then yet maybe there's something else, or maybe there's something other than that. And then we also have AI. AI is something that, if it's used in a way to bring about your creativity, it comes from your creative inspiration and your voice, you're actually giving that artificial intelligence instructions on what you need and what you're looking for. How do you use AI as a tool? Just like back in history, we had the photograph. How did we use photography as a tool? When it first came into being, everyone thought it was going to replace painting, portraiture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yet it did not. We
Can
find
I
our
jump in
ways.
there?
Sure.
Just a bit of humor, perhaps, but we're not going to sign up AI as an advisor. Okay. Hopefully, I agree with what you said. Okay.
Yeah.
But let me add to
that-
what you said. Let me
I hope
just
that
add-
didn't come across like I was communicating in that way. I'm
No,
using
no,
that
you didn't.
as, yeah, but I'm using that as an example to say
Yeah.
that there are many things in the world that are changing rapidly.
Yes.
And for artists, we can get left behind.
Yeah.
If we're not abreast to the new technologies and the new ways of realizing creativity, whether we're a 3D artist, a 2D artist, a performance artist, however that might look for you. So I know myself personally that when I first began working full time as an artist, I found myself kind of floundering. I remember asking a artist friend, "How do you know where to submit your work to?" Well, she said, "You just have to submit to artist calls." And I thought, well, where do you get the call from? I don't know where to get the call.
And that,
Right?
yeah, and that speaks to
yeah.
the mentorship and the community and the tools and the sharing and the collegiality and the collaboration that that ArtBridge Canada wants to foster. Now, Brian, it's not just visual arts, right? What's the scope?
No, it is visual arts.
It is visual arts.
You could take the concept and go elsewhere, but it would be overwhelming to try and create an organization that did visual arts, performing arts, everything all together.
Right.
This is what you have to focus on, something that's manageable.
Yeah.
And to the point, the question about the advisory committee or council, I would stress a key thing is what I started off saying, this is about filling a gap.
Right.
Number two on that is we're not competitive with any other organization. And I've done the analysis in different organizations, people say, well, how does this compare to company X doing this? There is no comparison because we're in a space that's absolutely pure in that there's nobody there. And because there's nobody there, it is a non-competitive business that we're setting up. We can wrap our arms around any number of art organizations because we will help them and they will help us. Our business is not to take business away from these people, but they're not in the area, the sphere that we're in. So art galleries, any museum, organizations, we can all get together. All of those associations that Kathleen just talked about, the various federations, I would see ourselves as joining forces in some way, supporting each other in some way, but recognizing like they aren't touching this aspect of community. They do things like they raise funds, they have contests, they have awards. Those are all great things. But there's nothing addressing that question that Kathleen just said is, where do I start? Okay. And that's the piece where it takes people who've been there and people who have expertise elsewhere. I'm talking to someone who's looking at, could he possibly assist with helping with artists reducing their tax structure? Okay, there's the business side of the art. Again, that's not what you would sign up for with the Federation of Artists or Canadian Society of Artists or anything like that. So we're filling that gap is what I'm saying. And so we want to attract as many different organizations and people. So it's not just artists, but primarily going to be driven by artists, but the essence of it is to look at all the aspects of artists' needs and try to find ways of filling those needs.
Brian, is this happening in other countries that you know of, in Europe or anywhere else?
I will confess I don't really know that.
Okay.
But I have a different sense um, my parentage was from Scotland. Okay, I always was intrigued with the European apprenticeship models. And when you start looking globally at how artists learn, there is a difference between what goes on in North America and what goes on in Europe and Asia. The mentoring that goes on within the European context is driven by things like the apprenticeship systems. Very different. In North America, it's this sense of individuality.
Right.
And that leads to different approaches. But I would suggest, again, that's why those artists saying, well, I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as self-taught. It's, I was taught by this method. I watched these people. I did this. I did YouTube. What we're saying is that efficient for you? Is that effective for you? Kathleen has just said, there's things that she hasn't been taught because there wasn't somebody standing there as the master.
Right.
And saying, this is how you do it. This is how we, the steps to follow. So while being self-taught is admirable in something, if somebody can develop the skills and techniques and perform, I would just suggest to you in terms of career development on a global scale, it's not the best way of doing things. You need to have coaches. And there's more of that. When you look online, you will see the rise of mentorship is really prevalent on the internet. We're just trying to say, we think we can organize some of that. And
Brian, yeah, how encouraging, and Kathleen, that would be as an artist who's starting up. I mean, how many dormant artists are there out there because they sort of didn't know what gear to get into to get it off the ground? There's all kinds of art that we're not revealing in ourselves because we don't have the engines to sort of bring that out. They say that art is the honey of the soul, and how much of that isn't flowing. It'd be very interesting to see once we got a national program like this up and running, and including art teachers in all kinds of schools, institutions, young kids, like getting on board this train to bring this empowering magic out.
And there's a reason that communities have to get behind this, okay? Is recognizing, Kathleen and I have been talking about this in terms of, with a focus on community, you start increasing the potential of the local communities. Like we're saying, it's community first, commerce follows. Okay, and right now, you get programs pushing sell the art, sell the art, sell the art. Well, that doesn't do anything for tourism. If you focus on building local artistic communities, there's a greater chance that will attract people. And people, you go back to Richard Florida's, the creative class. That's what attracts people to towns, villages, and grows the community. And people are leaving the big cities because they don't have that. They can't connect. But more and more, what we're seeing is smaller communities are growing. But with that, those local communities have to put something into supporting those artists. I'm not going to say this is what they should do, but there's lots of ways it can be creative. The key thing is support the local artists, and people will come, the economy will develop, and that's the payoff. That's why this is important. People might say, "Oh."
Let's just talk for a minute. We just have a couple minutes left. But the economic impact of art in Canada, it's 53 billion contributes to our GDPA every year, and about 650,000 people are employed in the art industry. So that's huge for this nation. And that's something that we can really try and start to foster and build and cultivate more.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
And that's based on no coordination.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we're saying we could get some economists, I guess, to get in this and speculate as to what the impact might be. Intuitively, it just makes sense, you know. When you cite these figures, what is the annual income the Stats Can or whatever reports for that group of artists? There's all these artists that are, you know, I think it's like 28,000 average. They're not making an awful lot, and yet they're still contributing such a huge amount. Now, that number that you reported is for all arts.
All art, yes, not just
All
visual art. Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying if we can push the visual arts, the visual arts will bring the other arts together.
Let's get the train out of the station.
Yeah, and that, you know, you could put filmmaking in there. You can do any number of those things, but the key is it's a balance. It's not just making artists happy, okay? Because people said that, well, why should we do this? If you don't do this, you'll get people like our friend to the south who can erode the culture. We have to maintain the culture. We have to build the culture. And that's our weapon, if you like. That's our strength.
Yeah. We'll have paintbrushes instead of pitchforks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We just have a couple minutes left. Just Kathleen, some closing thoughts from you, and we'll have to wrap it up today.
Yeah, I feel like I'm excited about what Brian is manifesting. I am very, very, very excited about doing what I can to contribute as much as I can and spread the word as much as I can as well. And I think that in doing this, I'm excited also to go to the Pacific Art Market in Nanaimo in the next couple of months and meet in person a lot of the West Coast artists. I think there's going to be a huge amount of people there. So that would be a good opportunity to have some leaflets and things like that available. I know it's a little old school, but leaflets work sometimes when you're meeting person to person.
Sorry, but we're running out of time here, but we've got your website, your contact information up there for viewers, and those that love art, want to get involved and hop on the ArtBridge and help with the development of this coast to coast to coast lovely vision. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, Brian and Kathleen. Sorry for the short cut off here, but we've got to run, and we'll be in touch. We look forward to seeing how this develops.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you find ways that you also can get involved in this and bringing this lovely cultural gem into our country with a force. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Coast to Coast Connections. Bye-bye.